How to Live a Simple Life in a Complicated World, published by the Growth Mind Audiobook. Introduction. Before you change your life, take an honest look at it, not at the version you describe to other people, not at the future you keep promising yourself you will eventually create. Look at what is happening right now. Look at where your hours disappear. Look at the notifications that interrupt your thoughts. Look at the commitments filling your calendar, the purchases filling your home, the unfinished tasks occupying your mind, and the goals you continue chasing simply because you started chasing them years ago. Your daily life is the clearest evidence of what you have chosen to prioritize. The uncomfortable question is this: does the life you are living actually reflect what you claim matters most? For many people, the answer is no. Life rarely becomes complicated through one dramatic decision. It happens through accumulation. You accept one more responsibility. You keep one more subscription. You agree to one more favor. You buy one more thing. You add another goal, another appointment, another obligation, another reason to stay busy. Individually, these choices seem harmless. Together, they can create a life that leaves you constantly occupied but strangely unfulfilled. You have more information yet struggle to think clearly, more possessions yet less physical space, more communication yet fewer conversations that truly matter, more opportunities yet less energy to pursue the ones you genuinely care about. Eventually, you realize that being busy and being purposeful are not the same thing. That realization is where this journey begins. Do not wait for the world to become quieter. It probably will not. Responsibilities will remain. Bills will arrive. People will need you. Problems will appear without asking for permission. Some forms of complexity are simply part of being alive. But not everything you carry is unavoidable. Some burdens are habits you never questioned. Some are expectations you inherited. Some are commitments you accepted out of guilt. Some are ambitions you pursued for approval. Some are distractions you keep feeding because you have forgotten how to sit with silence. Your task is to learn the difference. Throughout this audiobook, you will examine the parts of your life that consume your time, attention, money, energy, and emotional capacity. You will question what you have accepted, challenge what you automatically repeat, and identify what no longer deserves a place in your future. Then you will act. You will remove what has become unnecessary. You will finish what has remained unresolved. You will release what cannot be controlled. You will learn to say no before your life becomes overcrowded again. You will reconsider what you buy, what you pursue, what you tolerate, and who you allow to occupy your mental space. You will also confront a deeper question: what are you actually trying to build? Because simplicity is not about shrinking your life until nothing remains. It is not about abandoning ambition, responsibility, family, meaningful work, or difficult goals. It is about making room for the things that deserve your best. The objective is not to escape reality. It is to stop wasting your limited life on what does not matter. The world will keep offering you more noise, more choices, more demands, more reasons to hurry, compare, consume, and chase. You do not have to accept every offer. You can pause, you can question, you can choose. And eventually, you can build a life where the things you keep are there because they genuinely earned their place. That is where a simpler life begins, not with having less, but with finally becoming deliberate about what you are willing to carry. Chapter 1. Wake up and expose the life you are actually living. There is a moment in many people's lives when they realize they are exhausted without being able to explain exactly why. Nothing dramatic has happened. There has been no single catastrophe, no obvious collapse, no event that can be pointed to as the reason for their fatigue. Life simply feels heavier than it should. The days move quickly, the weeks disappear, and yet there is always the sense that something remains unfinished. You wake up already thinking about what needs to be done. You go to sleep remembering what you failed to do. Somewhere between those two moments, your attention is divided into dozens of pieces. The first step toward a simpler life is not to change everything. It is to stop pretending that everything is working. This requires an uncomfortable kind of honesty. Look at your actual life, not the life you imagine you are living. Your intentions may tell you that family is important, but does your calendar reflect that? You may say your health matters, but where does your energy go each day? You may claim you want financial freedom, yet how often do you spend money simply because you are bored, stressed, or trying to keep pace with people around you? You may believe you value peace, but how much unnecessary noise do you voluntarily invite into your mind? Your life leaves clues everywhere. Your calendar reveals what receives your time. Your bank account reveals what receives your money. Your browser history reveals what receives your curiosity. Your phone reveals what receives your attention. Your conversations reveal what occupies your emotional world. If you want to understand your priorities, you do not have to listen to what you say. Watch what you repeatedly do. This is where many people encounter an uncomfortable truth. Their lives have become complicated not because they made one terrible decision, but because they made hundreds of small decisions without ever reviewing them. You accepted the extra responsibility because it seemed temporary. You kept the subscription because it was inexpensive. You bought the item because it was on sale. You agreed to the invitation because saying no felt uncomfortable. You started another project because the previous one became boring. You kept checking your phone because everyone else seemed to be doing it. You continued pursuing an old ambition because admitting that you no longer wanted it felt like admitting failure. One decision rarely changes a life. Accumulated decisions do. Over time, these choices create what we might call complexity debt. Just as financial debt creates future payments, unnecessary complexity creates future demands. Every possession must eventually be stored, cleaned, maintained, or replaced. Every commitment requires time. Every unresolved problem occupies mental space. Every promise creates an expectation. Every unnecessary goal competes with the goals that genuinely matter. The strange thing about complexity debt is that you can accumulate it without realizing you are borrowing from your future. Then the bill arrives as exhaustion, so begin with an audit. Do not try to fix your entire existence in one afternoon. Instead, examine 5 areas: your time, your attention, your possessions, your commitments, and your ambitions. In each area, identify what consistently gives you value and what consistently takes more than it returns. Ask yourself simple but difficult questions. What am I doing because it truly matters? What am I doing because I am afraid to disappoint someone? What am I maintaining simply because I have already invested so much in it? What do I repeatedly complain about but refuse to change? What would I remove if I were building my life from the beginning today? Do not rush to answer. Some questions are valuable precisely because they make you uncomfortable. You may discover that the life you want does not require as much as you thought. You may discover that some of your stress comes from obligations that no longer serve a meaningful purpose. You may discover that you are spending enormous energy protecting an image of yourself that you no longer even believe in. This is not a reason for shame. It is a reason for action. Awareness is not the destination. It is the moment you finally turn on the lights. Once you can see what is consuming your life, you can begin deciding what deserves to remain. And that is the first real act of simplicity. Not throwing everything away, not escaping responsibility, and not pretending the world is easy. It is simply becoming conscious enough to stop living by default. Your life is already being shaped every day. The question is whether you are finally ready to shape it on purpose. Chapter 2. Cut the noise that has hijacked your attention. Once you begin examining your life honestly, you notice something that is easy to miss when you are constantly busy. Your attention is rarely where you deliberately put it. You may sit down intending to read, but a notification appears. You may begin working, then remember a message you have not answered. You may pick up your phone for one small task and find yourself 20 minutes later watching something you never intended to see. You may spend an entire evening consuming information and still feel as though you have not actually experienced anything. This is the strange condition of modern life. We have become surrounded by things that demand our attention, and many of them have become so familiar that we no longer recognize them as interruptions. Your phone vibrates, you look, a headline appears, you click, someone posts an opinion, you react, an advertisement promises something better, you consider buying it, a message arrives, you answer, then another arrives. The cycle continues. None of these moments seems particularly important, yet attention is not lost in dramatic pieces. It disappears in fragments, a few seconds here, a few minutes there. A quick glance becomes a habit becomes a reflex. Eventually, you may discover that you can no longer sit quietly without reaching for stimulation. This is where simplicity becomes more than organizing your schedule or clearing your home. It becomes an issue of mental ownership. Ask yourself, who controls your attention when you are not consciously directing it? The question matters because attention determines experience. What you repeatedly look at becomes what you think about. What you repeatedly think about influences what you desire. What you desire shapes your decisions. And your decisions, repeated over time, become your life. If you spend hours absorbing other people's opinions, you may eventually lose touch with your own. If you constantly compare your progress with strangers, your own achievements may begin to feel inadequate. If your mind is always filled with urgency, you may struggle to recognize what is genuinely important. The problem is not technology itself. Technology can connect families, teach valuable skills, save time, and open doors that previous generations could not imagine. The problem begins when useful tools quietly become masters. You may tell yourself that you are checking your phone because you have a spare moment. But eventually, the phone becomes the thing that decides what happens during every spare moment. This is the attention tax. You pay it whenever your concentration is interrupted, whenever your mind is pulled away from what you intended to do, and whenever you surrender a quiet moment simply because silence feels unfamiliar. The solution is not to disappear from society or throw your devices into a river. The solution is to introduce friction between yourself and the things that constantly compete for your mind. Start small. Turn off notifications that do not represent genuine emergencies. Move distracting applications away from your home screen. Decide when you will check messages instead of allowing messages to decide when you will stop working. Create periods of the day when your phone is physically out of reach. When you sit down to eat, leave the screen somewhere else. When you speak with someone you care about, give them the rare gift of your undivided attention. Most importantly, practice being unreachable for short periods. At first, this may feel uncomfortable. You may feel that you are missing something. You may reach for your phone without even realizing it. That moment is valuable. Do not immediately resist the discomfort. Observe it. You are discovering how deeply the habit has taken root. Then ask yourself what you are about to escape. Boredom, silence, an uncomfortable thought. The feeling that you should be doing something. Sometimes the noise we consume is not the problem. Sometimes it is the shelter we use to avoid hearing ourselves think. Reclaiming your attention means learning to tolerate quiet again. It means allowing your mind to wander without immediately filling the space. It means reading something slowly, walking without constant audio, sitting through a meal without documenting it, and having a thought without instantly searching for someone else's opinion about it. You will not control every interruption. Life will always demand your attention at inconvenient moments. A child may need you. A colleague may call. An unexpected problem may appear. Simplicity does not mean becoming unavailable to reality. It means becoming more deliberate about what you voluntarily invite into your mind. So begin today. Choose 1 hour that belongs entirely to you. No scrolling, no unnecessary notifications, no background noise designed to keep you stimulated. Use that hour to think, walk, read, work, create, or simply be still. At first, it may feel like you have less, but stay with it. You may discover that you have not lost anything at all. You have simply stopped giving away something you never realized was yours to protect. Chapter 3. Empty the physical and mental baggage you keep carrying. Once you begin taking control of your attention, something interesting happens. You start noticing what has been occupying your mind in the first place. You look around your home and see shelves filled with things you rarely touch. You open a drawer and find objects you forgot you owned. You check your inbox and discover hundreds of messages that were never important enough to answer. You remember projects you started months ago, promises you made years ago, and decisions you keep postponing. Suddenly, the clutter becomes visible. But clutter is not only what sits on a table or fills a closet. Some of the heaviest things you carry cannot be seen at all. You carry the conversation you never had, the decision you refuse to make, the goal you no longer want but feel obligated to pursue, the old mistake you keep replaying, the commitment you accepted when your circumstances were completely different. The possession you keep because throwing it away feels like admitting that a chapter of your life is over. This is why simplifying your life requires more than cleaning your house. You have to examine what you are carrying. Think of your life as a backpack. At the beginning, you place something inside because it seems useful. Then you add something else, then another thing. Eventually, the backpack becomes heavy, but because you added each item separately, you cannot remember exactly when it became difficult to carry. That is how complexity works. You rarely notice the weight of one unnecessary commitment. You notice the weight of 50. This is where you need to become ruthless, not cruel, but honest. Take a look at your possessions. Ask yourself why each category of things exists in your life. Are you keeping it because you use it, because you genuinely value it, or because you are afraid of regretting its absence? Those are very different reasons. A useful object that serves you deserves a place. A sentimental object that connects you to someone you love may deserve a place. But something that has been sitting untouched for years, taking up space because you might someday become the person who needs it, deserves a more difficult question. How much of your home is occupied by the life you actually live, and how much is reserved for imaginary versions of yourself? Perhaps you own equipment for a hobby you abandoned, books you bought to become someone you never became, clothes that belong to a different identity, tools for projects that never started, objects connected to ambitions that quietly disappeared. Letting these things go can feel surprisingly emotional. That is because you are not always removing an object. Sometimes you are admitting that a particular version of your future is no longer coming, and that can be freeing. The same principle applies to commitments. Make 3 lists. The first is remove. Write down everything you can eliminate without damaging what truly matters. Cancel unnecessary subscriptions, clear unused possessions, leave commitments that no longer have a legitimate purpose. The second is resolve. These are the things that will continue occupying your mind until you take action. Send the message, pay the bill, finish the small task, have the conversation, make the decision. The third is release. This is the most difficult category. Release the outcome you cannot control. Release the need to make everyone understand you. Release the resentment that has become part of your identity. Release the fantasy that you can return to the past and make every decision differently. Not everything needs to be fixed. Some things need to be accepted and put down. As you do this, be careful not to turn simplicity into another form of perfectionism. You do not need a spotless home, an empty calendar, or a perfectly organized mind. Real life is naturally messy. Children make messes, work creates pressure, relationships require effort, unexpected problems appear. The goal is not to eliminate all disorder. The goal is to stop carrying disorder that no longer needs to be yours. Start with one small area, one drawer, one shelf, one digital folder, one unresolved task, one commitment that has quietly become a burden. Do not wait until you have the energy to transform everything. Remove one thing, resolve one thing, release one thing. Then notice how you feel. You may discover that simplicity does not always create excitement. Sometimes it creates relief. A quiet, almost invisible relief, the feeling of no longer having to remember something, maintain something, explain something, or worry about something. That relief is valuable because every unnecessary thing you remove creates a little more room for something else. Room to think, room to rest, room to notice, room to choose, and eventually, room to live. You cannot carry everything and move freely at the same time. At some point, you have to look inside the backpack, decide what still belongs there, and become willing to put the rest down. Chapter 4. Say no before your life becomes too full. There is a point where removing the old weight is no longer enough. You can clear your home, silence your phone, finish your unfinished tasks, and release commitments that no longer make sense. But if you continue saying yes to everything that asks for your time, your life will slowly become crowded again. Simplicity is not only the art of letting go, it is the discipline of refusing to keep replacing what you remove. This is where the word no becomes more important than most people realize. For many people, saying no feels unnecessarily difficult. You may worry about disappointing someone. You may fear being misunderstood. You may think the opportunity will not come again. You may tell yourself that helping someone is simply what a good person does. Sometimes you say yes because you want to be liked, sometimes because you feel guilty, and sometimes because you have become so accustomed to being available that you no longer recognize your own limits. But every yes has a hidden cost. When you agree to one more meeting, you give away an hour that could have been used elsewhere. When you accept another responsibility, you create another obligation to remember. When you commit to another project, you divide your attention. When you agree to something you do not genuinely want to do, you may be borrowing time from something that matters more. This does not mean you should become selfish or indifferent. A meaningful life requires generosity. There will always be moments when you help someone, make a sacrifice, or take on an uncomfortable responsibility because it is the right thing to do. The difference is choice. A conscious yes has value. An automatic yes has a price. Before you accept something new, create a pause. You do not need to answer every request immediately. Give yourself enough time to ask a few honest questions. Why am I saying yes? Would I choose this if I were not afraid of disappointing someone? Does this support something I genuinely care about? What will this commitment require from me next week, next month, or next year? And perhaps the most revealing question of all, if I say yes to this, what important thing will I have less time for? That question changes the way you see commitments. Suddenly, the issue is no longer whether you have an extra hour. The issue is what that hour is worth. Your life has limited space. You cannot give everything equal importance. Something will always receive your attention first, and something else will receive what remains. This is why boundaries are not acts of rejection. They are acts of prioritization. When you say no to an unnecessary invitation, you may be saying yes to rest. When you decline another obligation, you may be protecting time with your family. When you refuse to answer every message immediately, you may be preserving the concentration required to do meaningful work. A no does not always mean I do not care. Sometimes it means I care enough about what matters to me that I cannot give everything my time. Start practicing this in small situations. Do not make dramatic changes overnight. Simply stop giving immediate answers. When someone asks for your time, say that you will check your schedule first. When an opportunity appears, resist the instinct to assume that more opportunities are always better. When you feel pressured to agree, notice the feeling before obeying it. You may discover something uncomfortable. Some of the people who benefited most from your lack of boundaries will not appreciate your new ones. That is okay. Your responsibility is not to make everyone happy with your choices. Your responsibility is to live honestly with the consequences of them. The goal is not to say no to everything. The goal is to make your yes meaningful again. A life filled with automatic yeses eventually becomes a life you have no time to live. So before you add another responsibility, stop. Before you accept another invitation, pause. Before you promise another hour of your life, ask whether it deserves to be spent. You have already begun removing what does not belong. Now protect the space you have created. Because a simpler life is not built only by what you eliminate. It is built by what you finally become strong enough to refuse. Chapter 5. Define your enough before the world defines it for you. After you begin clearing unnecessary commitments from your life, an unexpected problem can appear. You create space, but you are not entirely sure what to do with it. You remove one distraction, and another quickly takes its place. You spend less money, then find something else you suddenly need. You finish one goal, and before you have even enjoyed the achievement, another target appears in the distance. This is the problem with living without a definition of enough. If you never decide where enough begins, the finish line will always move. There will always be a newer phone, a larger home, a higher salary, a more impressive title, a better vacation, a bigger audience, or another achievement waiting to convince you that your current life is incomplete. The world is remarkably skilled at making ordinary lives feel insufficient. You are constantly shown what you do not have. Someone else has a better car. Someone else earns more. Someone else travels more often. Someone else appears more successful, more attractive, more productive, more accomplished. Even when your life improves, comparison can quickly turn your progress into disappointment. This is why simplicity requires a personal definition of enough. Enough does not mean giving up on growth. It does not mean refusing ambition or settling for less than you are capable of achieving. It means deciding that your life will not be controlled by an appetite that has no natural stopping point. Think about what happens when you never define enough. You may spend years pursuing a number that keeps changing. You earn more, but your lifestyle expands. You acquire more, but your responsibilities increase. You achieve something you once desperately wanted, but the satisfaction lasts only briefly before your mind moves toward the next target. The problem is not that you want to improve. The problem is that improvement without direction can become endless consumption. So begin asking better questions. How much money do I actually need to live with security and dignity? How much work is enough before additional success begins costing more than it gives? How many possessions genuinely improve my life? How much recognition do I need before I stop performing for people who may never be satisfied? How much of my future am I willing to sacrifice for a version of success I may not even enjoy? These questions do not have universal answers. Your enough will not look like someone else's. One person may value financial independence, another may value free time. Someone else may choose a smaller income in exchange for greater flexibility. The important thing is not choosing the correct definition, it is choosing your own. Without that decision, the market, the algorithm, and other people's expectations will gladly choose for you. You will be told what to buy. You will be told what to desire. You will be told what success looks like. You will be encouraged to keep upgrading your lifestyle until your income becomes a race against your expenses and your time becomes a payment toward maintaining everything you accumulated. At some point, you have to step off the moving walkway. Look at your current life and ask what is already enough. Maybe you already have enough possessions. Maybe your home is already large enough. Maybe your income is sufficient, but your spending has become excessive. Maybe you do not need another achievement. Maybe you need time to enjoy the achievements you already earned. This does not mean you should stop dreaming. It means your dreams should belong to you. Try creating your own enough line. Write down what you genuinely need to feel secure, what you genuinely want to experience, and what you are pursuing primarily because you believe you are supposed to want it. Then examine the difference. You may discover that the life you imagined would require far more than the life you actually want. That realization can be powerful, because once you know what enough looks like, you become harder to manipulate. You can still pursue more, but you no longer need more to prove that you are doing well. You can earn more without worshipping money. You can own more without needing possessions to define you. You can achieve more without allowing achievement to consume your identity. You can grow without constantly feeling behind. That is the freedom of enough. It does not make you smaller. It gives you a place to stand. And from that place, for the first time, you can decide whether the next thing you are chasing is truly worth the life it will cost you. Chapter 6. Break free from the life you were programmed to want. Once you begin defining what enough means for you, another question becomes impossible to avoid. Who taught you what you were supposed to want in the first place? This question can be unsettling because many of our ambitions feel deeply personal. We may believe we chose them freely. We may have spent years working toward them, sacrificing sleep, comfort, relationships, and time. But sometimes the goals we pursue were placed in our minds long before we were mature enough to question them. You were told what success should look like. Get a good education, find a respectable career, earn more, buy a better home, upgrade your lifestyle, become impressive, stay ahead, make people proud. None of these things is inherently wrong. A meaningful career can be fulfilling. Financial security can create freedom. A comfortable home can bring stability. Achievement can be deeply satisfying. The problem begins when you pursue these things without ever asking whether they actually belong to you. You can spend years climbing a ladder only to discover that it was leaning against the wrong wall. This is what happens when you build what we might call a borrowed life. You adopt goals because they are admired. You choose a career because it sounds successful. You chase money because everyone around you treats income as proof of worth. You buy things because they signal that you are doing well. You become busy because being busy makes you feel important. Eventually, you become very good at performing a life that you never consciously selected. The hardest part is recognizing it. Ask yourself a question that can cut through years of conditioning. If nobody could see my achievements, would I still want them? Imagine that your salary could never be mentioned. Your house could never be photographed. Your job title could never be used to impress anyone. Your possessions would remain invisible to the world. No one would know how productive you were, how successful you appeared, or how much you had accomplished. What would you still choose? Your answer may reveal something important. Perhaps you would still want meaningful work. Perhaps you would still want financial independence. Perhaps you would still pursue excellence. But perhaps you would also discover that some of your goals were never about fulfillment. They were about recognition. This is not an invitation to abandon ambition. It is an invitation to purify it. There is a difference between wanting to build something valuable and wanting to look successful. There is a difference between earning money for freedom and earning money simply because you cannot tolerate being behind someone else. There is a difference between improving yourself and spending your entire life trying to become acceptable in the eyes of people who are barely paying attention. The world will always provide a scoreboard. Your task is to decide whether you want to play the game. Start by examining the major goals currently occupying your life. Write them down without defending them. Then ask where each one came from. Did you choose it? Did your family expect it? Did your culture reward it? Did you see someone else achieve it and decide you needed it too? Did fear push you toward it? Did insecurity disguise itself as ambition? You may find that some goals survived this examination because they genuinely matter to you. Keep them. Pursue them with greater clarity. Others may begin to look strangely empty. Do not be afraid of that discovery. Changing direction is not failure. Sometimes the most courageous achievement is admitting that the destination you once wanted no longer makes sense. You are allowed to outgrow your own plans. You are allowed to want a quieter career, a smaller home, more time with your family, fewer possessions, or a life that looks ordinary from the outside but feels deeply satisfying from within. You do not need permission to redefine success. The world may call your choices too small. Let it. A life does not become meaningful because it impresses the largest number of people. It becomes meaningful when the person living it can recognize themselves inside it. So stop asking, what would make my life look successful? Ask a better question. What kind of life would still feel worthwhile if no one were watching? Your answer may be the beginning of a life that is finally yours. Chapter 7. Stop feeding the hunger for more. Once you begin questioning the life you were taught to want, you may notice something even more uncomfortable. The desire for more does not disappear simply because you understand where it came from. You can recognize the pressure of comparison and still compare yourself. You can understand that possessions do not guarantee happiness and still feel tempted by the next purchase. You can know that success has no final destination and still find yourself chasing another milestone. This is because the hunger for more is not always rational. It is emotional. It often begins with a simple promise. When I have that, I will finally feel different. When I earn more, I will feel secure. When I buy that, I will feel successful. When I reach that position, I will feel respected. When I become that person, I will finally feel enough. The problem is that the mind adapts. What once felt extraordinary eventually becomes ordinary. The new car becomes familiar. The larger house becomes normal. The promotion becomes yesterday's news. The achievement that once seemed like the finish line becomes the starting point for the next pursuit. Then the cycle begins again. Want, acquire, adapt, want, again. There is nothing wrong with wanting to improve your circumstances. The danger appears when you become dependent on constant acquisition to feel that your life is moving forward. Modern culture is extremely good at keeping this cycle alive. You are shown what you are missing before you have time to appreciate what you already possess. Advertising does not need to convince you that your life is terrible. It only needs to suggest that your life could be slightly better with a different product, a better experience, a newer version, a more impressive upgrade. The message is subtle but powerful. You are almost there. Just one more thing. Then you will be satisfied. But the finish line keeps moving. This is why you need to learn the difference between genuine desire and manufactured dissatisfaction. Before buying something, ask yourself what problem you believe it will solve. Are you purchasing a useful object, or are you trying to purchase a feeling? Are you bored, lonely, stressed, insecure, trying to reward yourself, trying to impress someone? There is nothing wrong with buying something you genuinely need or enjoy. The goal is not to turn every purchase into a moral examination. The goal is to become aware of the emotional reasons behind your habits. A simple practice can help. When you want something that is not essential, wait. Do not immediately obey the impulse. Give the desire time to exist without acting on it. You may discover that some desires disappear when they are no longer being constantly stimulated. The thing you thought you needed becomes strangely unimportant after a few days. The excitement fades, and you realize you were attracted to the idea of owning it more than the reality of using it. This pause creates freedom. You begin to understand that wanting something does not create an obligation to obtain it. That may sound obvious, but many people live as though every desire deserves a response. It does not. You can want the expensive watch and keep the one you already own. You can admire someone's lifestyle without trying to reproduce it. You can appreciate luxury without making luxury your identity. You can desire success without sacrificing everything for it. You can enjoy beautiful things without believing they are necessary for a beautiful life. The deeper shift occurs when you stop measuring progress by how much you acquire and start measuring it by how deliberately you live. Perhaps progress means having fewer unnecessary expenses. Perhaps it means needing less external validation. Perhaps it means having enough savings to make choices without panic. Perhaps it means being able to walk into a store, see something you like, and calmly decide that you do not need it. That is a quiet form of power. You are no longer being pulled by every impulse. You are choosing. And the more often you practice choosing, the less control the hunger for more has over you. Remember, the objective is not to kill ambition. It is to remove the desperation from it. Continue growing, continue learning, continue building, continue reaching for meaningful goals. But do not confuse movement with progress. Sometimes the greatest evidence that you are moving forward is not that you have acquired something new. It is that you can finally look at what you already have and recognize its value. Because when you stop needing more to feel complete, you gain something that no purchase can provide. You gain the freedom to decide when enough is enough. Chapter 8. Kill the old identity that keeps pulling you back. There is a point in simplifying your life when you realize that the hardest things to remove are not objects, they are identities. You can clean your room, cancel unnecessary subscriptions, reduce your commitments, spend less money, turn off your notifications. You can make all these external changes and still feel trapped by an invisible version of yourself that keeps demanding more. Perhaps you have always been the person who must succeed, the person who never says no, the person everyone depends on, the person who must appear strong, the person who needs to be admired, the person who cannot slow down without feeling guilty. These identities can become so familiar that you stop recognizing them as choices. They begin to feel like facts about who you are. But an identity is often just a story you have repeated for so long that you stopped questioning it. Maybe you learned early that being useful was the best way to earn approval, so you became endlessly available. Maybe you were praised for achievement, so you learned to measure your worth through productivity. Maybe you were made to feel that ordinary was not good enough, so you built your entire life around proving that you were exceptional. At some point, the strategy that helped you survive or succeed can become the very thing that prevents you from living freely. This is why simplifying your life can feel strangely threatening. When you remove the constant busyness, you may have to face the possibility that you are using busyness to avoid yourself. When you stop chasing recognition, you may have to discover whether you respect yourself without an audience. When you stop trying to impress people, you may have to ask whether the life you built was actually designed for you. These are difficult questions, but they are necessary. The old identity will often fight to survive. You may feel guilty when you rest. You may feel lazy when you do less. You may feel anxious when someone is disappointed by your boundaries. You may feel insignificant when you are no longer competing. Do not mistake these feelings for evidence that you are making the wrong decision. Sometimes discomfort is simply the sound of an old identity losing its authority. Imagine someone who has spent 20 years proving that they are successful. Their home reflects their achievements. Their schedule reflects their importance. Their possessions reflect their status. Then one day they realize that they are exhausted. What happens if they choose a simpler life? They may fear that people will think they have failed. That fear reveals the deeper problem. They were not only pursuing success, they were protecting an image of success. There is a difference. One can give your life purpose. The other can quietly consume it. So ask yourself, which version of me am I constantly working to maintain? Maybe it is the successful one. Maybe it is the generous one. Maybe it is the strong one. Maybe it is the agreeable one. Maybe it is the person who always has everything under control. Now ask a harder question. What would happen if I stopped performing that role? You may discover that some people would be surprised. Some might criticize you. Some relationships may change, but others may become more genuine because you are finally showing up as yourself rather than as the version of yourself you believe everyone expects. This does not mean abandoning responsibility or becoming careless. It means separating your values from your performance. You can be ambitious without needing to prove your worth. You can be generous without being endlessly available. You can be successful without turning achievement into your identity. You can be strong while admitting that you are tired. You can be ordinary in the eyes of the world and still live an extraordinary life. Start with one small act of rebellion against your old identity. If you are always available, let one message wait. If you are always working, take an evening without productivity. If you constantly seek approval, make one decision without explaining it to anyone. If you always chase the next achievement, pause long enough to appreciate what you have already accomplished. Notice the discomfort, then let it pass. You are not losing yourself. You are discovering which parts of yourself were never truly yours. A simpler life requires space, and sometimes the greatest clutter occupying that space is the person you think you are supposed to be. So release the performance, release the image, release the endless need to prove. You do not need to become less capable. You simply need to stop spending your life convincing everyone that you are enough. The moment you stop performing for an imaginary audience, you finally have the freedom to ask the most important question of all. If I no longer needed to prove who I am, how would I choose to live? Chapter 9. Build boundaries that keep chaos outside. After you begin removing unnecessary things from your life, you may feel a sense of relief. Your schedule has more breathing room. Your mind is quieter. Your home contains fewer distractions. You have started saying no to commitments that once consumed your time. For the first time in a long while, you can feel the difference between being busy and actually being present. But there is a problem. Space attracts new demands. The moment you create room in your life, something will try to occupy it. Another invitation will arrive. Another project will appear. Someone will ask for another favor. Your phone will begin demanding your attention again. Old habits will quietly return, often disguised as harmless exceptions. This is why simplifying your life is not a one-time cleaning project. It is a form of maintenance. You cannot remove everything once and expect life to remain simple forever. New responsibilities will appear. Your circumstances will change. Your priorities will evolve. People will make requests. Opportunities will compete for your attention. Without boundaries, the space you worked so hard to create will slowly disappear. A boundary is simply a decision made in advance about what you will and will not allow into your life. It might be a limit on how late you work, a rule about when you check your phone, a decision not to answer messages during certain hours, a commitment to protect one evening each week for your family, a refusal to lend money you cannot afford to lose, a choice to leave conversations that repeatedly become disrespectful or destructive. Boundaries are not walls designed to keep everyone away. They are gates. They allow you to decide what enters. The difficulty is that boundaries often disappoint people. If you have spent years being endlessly available, your first attempt to become less available may surprise others. Someone who was accustomed to receiving an immediate response may suddenly complain when you take your time. Someone who relied on your inability to say no may become frustrated when you finally begin saying it. This can make you question yourself. Do not. Someone else's disappointment is not automatically evidence that you have done something wrong. You are allowed to have limits. You are allowed to protect your evenings. You are allowed to take a day off. You are allowed to decline an invitation without constructing an elaborate excuse. You are allowed to change your mind when a commitment no longer makes sense. The key is to stop treating every request as an emergency. Not everything deserves immediate access to you. This is particularly important with technology. If every message can interrupt you at any moment, then your attention is never fully yours. Create specific windows for communication. Let people know when you are available and when you are not. You do not need to be permanently connected to be responsible. The same principle applies to your physical environment. If you constantly bring new things into your home, you will eventually recreate the clutter you removed. Create a simple rule. Before something new enters, consider whether something else should leave. This is not about maintaining an empty house. It is about preventing accumulation from becoming automatic again. Your schedule needs the same protection. Before accepting a new commitment, look at the life you already have. Do not ask only, can I technically fit this in? Ask, what will this displace? That question forces you to see the hidden cost. A new project may mean less sleep. Another meeting may mean less time with your family. Another obligation may mean sacrificing the quiet hour you finally began protecting. Every addition has a consequence. Once you understand this, boundaries become less about restriction and more about preservation. You are protecting your energy from being spent everywhere. You are protecting your attention from being fragmented. You are protecting your relationships from receiving only the exhausted version of you. You are protecting the future you are trying to build from the demands of the present moment. Start by creating 3 personal boundaries. 1 for your time. 1 for your attention. 1 for your energy. Make them simple enough to follow and firm enough to matter. Then defend them without apology. You will not always succeed. There will be emergencies. There will be exceptions. There will be days when life becomes chaotic despite your best intentions. That is normal. The goal is not perfect control. The goal is to have a structure that allows you to return to yourself when life pulls you away. A simple life does not happen because the world finally stops making demands. It happens because you become selective about which demands deserve a response. You have already learned how to remove what does not belong. Now learn how to keep it from coming back. Because if you do not protect your peace, someone or something will eventually spend it for you. Chapter 10. Design your days so discipline becomes easier. Once you have cleared unnecessary commitments and established stronger boundaries, you face a new challenge. You have created space, but space alone does not create a meaningful life. If you do not decide what belongs in that space, old habits will eventually move back in. This is where many people make a mistake. They believe that living simply requires extraordinary discipline. They imagine waking up every morning with perfect motivation, making the right choices all day, resisting every distraction, and maintaining complete control over their schedule. That is not realistic. You will have tired days. You will lose focus. Your priorities will compete with each other. Unexpected problems will interrupt your plans. There will be mornings when you do not feel motivated to do anything at all. So stop building your life around the assumption that you will always have unlimited willpower. Instead, design your environment so that the right choice becomes easier to make. Your surroundings influence your behavior more than you may realize. If your phone is beside your bed, you are more likely to check it when you wake up. If unhealthy food is always within reach, you are more likely to eat it without thinking. If your workspace is filled with distractions, concentration becomes harder. If every day begins without a clear direction, the first demand that appears may end up controlling the entire day. You do not need more self-control for every problem. Sometimes you need a better system. Consider your morning. What happens during the first 30 minutes after you wake up? Do you immediately enter the digital world and allow other people's priorities to fill your mind? Or do you create a small period of quiet before the demands of the day begin? You do not need an elaborate morning routine. You simply need a deliberate beginning. Perhaps you drink water, make your bed, take a short walk, read a few pages, or sit quietly with your thoughts. The activity itself matters less than the principle behind it. Begin the day by choosing what receives your attention. The same applies to your work. If you have an important task, make it easier to begin. Prepare what you need the night before. Remove unnecessary tabs from your computer. Put your phone somewhere you cannot casually reach it. Decide what the first step will be before you sit down. Do not rely on motivation to tell you what to do. Make the next action obvious. This principle can transform your relationship with discipline. Instead of constantly asking yourself to resist temptation, redesign your surroundings so temptation has fewer opportunities to control you. The goal is not to create a perfect environment. It is to reduce unnecessary friction. If you want to read more, keep a book where you normally sit. If you want to exercise, prepare your clothes in advance. If you want to spend less, make impulsive purchases more difficult. If you want deeper conversations, put your phone away when someone is speaking. If you want better sleep, create a consistent boundary between your day and your night. Small environmental decisions can quietly shape large parts of your life. There is another important principle here. Simplify your defaults. Every decision consumes a small amount of mental energy. What should I eat? When should I exercise? When should I answer messages? What should I work on first? Should I buy this? Should I attend that? You do not need to make every decision from scratch. Create defaults that reflect your values. Have a few reliable meals. Establish regular times for important activities. Keep certain evenings free. Set automatic savings. Create specific periods for communication. Decide in advance how you will handle common distractions. The purpose is not to turn your life into a rigid machine. It is to reserve your mental energy for decisions that genuinely deserve it. A simple life is not necessarily one with fewer responsibilities. It is one with fewer unnecessary decisions competing for your attention. Your goal is to create a rhythm that supports the person you are trying to become. And remember, systems must be flexible enough to survive real life. Some days will go badly. You will miss the workout. You will eat the wrong meal. You will lose an afternoon to distraction. You will fall behind. Do not turn one imperfect day into an excuse to abandon the entire system. Return. Begin again. Simplicity is not perfection. It is the ability to recover quickly when life becomes complicated. So look at your environment today. What is making the right choice unnecessarily difficult? What is making the wrong choice almost effortless? Change one thing, move the distraction, prepare the useful option, create the boundary, simplify the decision, then repeat. You do not need to become a person with extraordinary discipline. Build a life that does not constantly demand extraordinary discipline from you. Because the most sustainable form of self-control is not fighting yourself every day. It is designing your days so that your environment quietly helps you become the person you have decided to be. Chapter 11. Spend your time, money, and energy like they are finite. Once you begin designing your days with greater intention, another truth becomes impossible to ignore. Simplicity is not only about what you remove, it is also about where you direct what remains. Your time is going somewhere, your money is going somewhere, your energy is going somewhere. And whether you are paying attention or not, these three resources are constantly being spent. The problem is that most people manage their money more carefully than they manage their time, and they manage their time more carefully than they manage their attention. They may check their bank balance regularly, yet rarely examine where their best hours disappear. They may think carefully before making a large purchase, yet give away an entire afternoon without noticing. But time is not refunded. Energy does not accumulate indefinitely. Attention cannot be recovered once it has been scattered. This is why living simply requires you to become more deliberate about spending. Imagine waking up with a limited account containing 24 hours. You cannot save today's hours for tomorrow. You cannot borrow next week's energy without eventually paying the price. Every day, the account is reset, and whatever you failed to use meaningfully is gone. Now ask yourself, where are you making your largest withdrawals? Perhaps your mornings disappear into your phone. Perhaps your evenings are consumed by work you brought home because you never established a stopping point. Perhaps your weekends are filled with obligations you accepted during the week without considering their cumulative cost. You may not have a time problem. You may have an allocation problem. The same is true of money. Money is not merely something you spend. It represents portions of your life that you exchanged for income. When you spend $100, you are not only spending $100, you are spending a small piece of the time and effort required to earn it. This perspective can change the way you look at consumption. Instead of asking only, "Can I afford this?" ask, "Is this worth the life energy it represents?" That question does not mean you should become fearful of spending. Money can provide comfort, opportunity, generosity, and freedom. You should spend it on things that genuinely improve your life. The goal is not to spend as little as possible. The goal is to spend intentionally. A cheap purchase you never use can be more wasteful than an expensive item you use every day. A large home that creates constant financial pressure may provide less freedom than a smaller one that allows you to save and breathe. A high income can still produce a stressful life if every dollar is immediately committed to maintaining an expensive lifestyle. The question is not simply how much you have. It is how much of what you have is actually serving you. Then there is energy. This is the resource people often ignore until it is gone. You can technically have free time and still lack the energy to enjoy it. You can have money and still be too mentally exhausted to use it well. You can have opportunities and still feel incapable of pursuing them because your attention has been drained by too many competing demands. That is why you must identify your highest value hours. When are you mentally sharpest? When do you think most clearly? When do you have the greatest capacity for meaningful work? Protect those hours. Do not automatically give your best energy to the loudest demand. Your most important work deserves more than whatever energy survives after everything else has taken its share. This principle also applies to relationships. Not every relationship deserves equal access to your emotional resources. Some people leave you feeling understood, encouraged, and grounded. Others repeatedly create confusion, tension, or exhaustion. You cannot always remove difficult people from your life. Sometimes they are family members, colleagues, or people connected to responsibilities you cannot simply abandon. But you can become more intentional about how much access they have to your inner world. Your resources are finite. Treat them accordingly. Tonight, perform a simple audit. Look at your calendar and identify where your time goes. Look at your spending and identify where your money goes. Look at your week and identify what consistently drains your energy. Then compare these three lists with the life you claim to want. The gaps will tell you something important. If you say family matters but give them only exhausted leftovers, something needs to change. If you say freedom matters but spend every dollar maintaining an expensive lifestyle, something needs to change. If you say meaningful work matters but give your best attention to distractions, something needs to change. You do not need to rebuild your entire life overnight. Choose one resource, redirect 1 hour, reconsider one expense, protect one source of energy, then watch what happens. A simpler life is not created by having unlimited resources. It is created by becoming extremely intentional with the limited resources you already possess. Because your life is not defined only by what you own or what you achieve. It is defined by what you repeatedly choose to spend yourself on. Chapter 12. Slow down and take your life back from the clock. There is a strange contradiction at the center of modern life. We have invented machines that save us time, created services that deliver almost anything to our doors, and developed technologies that allow us to communicate instantly across the world. Yet many people feel as though they have less time than ever. The problem may not be the number of hours available. It may be the speed at which we have learned to live. We hurry through breakfast because we are late. We rush through work because another deadline is approaching. We eat while looking at a screen. We listen to someone while preparing our response. We take vacations while checking emails. Even our rest can become another task to complete. Then we wonder why life feels as though it is passing too quickly. Speed can be useful. There are moments when urgency is necessary. Emergencies require immediate action. Deadlines matter. Responsibilities cannot always wait. But when everything becomes urgent, nothing receives our full presence. A rushed life has a hidden cost. You may complete more tasks while experiencing less of what you are doing. You may move quickly through years without noticing that the people around you are changing, that your children are growing, that your parents are aging, or that your own life is quietly becoming a collection of memories you barely remember living. This is why slowing down is not laziness. It is attention. When you slow down, you begin to notice details that speed made invisible. You notice the expression on someone's face during a conversation. You taste your food instead of simply finishing it. You hear the sounds around you. You recognize your own thoughts before immediately replacing them with another distraction. The challenge is that many people have become uncomfortable with stillness. Give yourself 10 empty minutes, and your hand may automatically reach for your phone. Sit quietly, and your mind may immediately search for something to consume. Wait in a line, and you may feel compelled to fill the silence. This reveals something important. Sometimes we are not addicted to busyness because we have too much to do. Sometimes we are addicted to busyness because slowing down forces us to notice what we have been avoiding. The unanswered question, the unresolved feeling, the dissatisfaction we kept covering with activity, the fear that our lives are moving in a direction we never consciously chose. You do not need to solve all of these things immediately, but you do need enough quiet to hear them. Start by reclaiming small pieces of your day. Eat one meal without a screen. Walk without listening to anything. Drink your morning coffee without scrolling. Sit outside for 10 minutes and allow yourself to be bored. Have a conversation without checking your phone. Choose one ordinary activity and perform it without trying to multitask. At first, these moments may feel strangely unproductive. That is precisely the point. You are teaching your mind that not every moment must produce something. You are reminding yourself that your worth is not measured by how efficiently you fill every available minute. There is also a practical lesson here. Stop treating every delay as a problem. Traffic may slow you down. A queue may make you wait. A conversation may take longer than expected. A task may not happen according to your preferred schedule. You cannot control every interruption, but you can decide whether every interruption becomes a source of frustration. Sometimes the best response to a slower moment is not to fight it. It is to inhabit it. The world will continue moving at its own pace. You do not have to match its speed every second. Your goal is not to become slow in everything you do. It is to become capable of choosing your pace. Move quickly when speed genuinely matters. Move slowly when presence matters more. Work intensely when concentration is required. Rest completely when rest is necessary. Listen without planning your next sentence. Look at the person in front of you instead of the screen in your hand. These small choices may appear insignificant, but they change the texture of a life. Eventually, you begin to understand that time was never only something to manage. It was something to experience. You do not get your years back because you completed more tasks. You do not receive extra life because you answered every message immediately. At the end, the value of your days will not be measured by how efficiently you moved through them. It will be measured by whether you were actually there. So slow down where you can. Leave some space in your schedule. Let some moments remain unrecorded. Allow some hours to pass without being optimized. You are not falling behind. You are returning. And sometimes, the most powerful way to take your life back is to stop rushing through it. Chapter 13. Choose what deserves the best parts of you. By this point, you have removed distractions, questioned your ambitions, challenged your appetite for more, and created boundaries around your time and attention. You have learned to slow down and notice what your previous pace made invisible. Now comes the most important part. You must decide what deserves the space you have created, because simplicity is not ultimately about subtraction. If all you do is remove things, you may end up with an empty life instead of a meaningful one. The purpose of clearing space is to give your best energy to what is genuinely worth having. This is where many people make another mistake. They spend their lives responding to whatever demands attention instead of choosing what deserves attention. The loudest person gets the response. The most urgent email gets opened. The newest problem gets solved. The latest opportunity gets pursued. Meanwhile, the things that quietly matter most, your health, your family, your closest friendships, your inner life, your meaningful work, are often pushed toward the edges of the day. They become leftovers. You tell yourself you will make time for them later, but later is not a strategy. If something matters, it must eventually receive a place in your actual life, not just in your intentions. Look at the people you love. Are they receiving the best parts of you, or only the exhausted version that remains after everything else has been handled? Look at your health. Are you protecting it now, or waiting for a future crisis to force you to care? Look at your work. Are you spending your strongest hours on something meaningful, or are you giving your attention away and trying to complete important tasks with whatever remains? Your answers will reveal your real priorities. This is why your calendar can be more honest than your words. You can say that family is important, but if your schedule never leaves room for them, the calendar tells a different story. You can say that creativity matters, but if every free moment is consumed by entertainment, the evidence is clear. You can say that you want peace, but if you repeatedly invite unnecessary conflict into your life, your behavior is contradicting your desire. There is no need to judge yourself for this. Simply notice it. Then make a change. Start by identifying 5 things that genuinely matter to you, not things that sound impressive, not things you think you should value. Choose the things that, if removed from your life, would leave you feeling that something essential was missing. Perhaps it is your family, perhaps it is meaningful work, perhaps it is physical health, perhaps it is faith, creativity, learning, friendship, service, or solitude. Whatever your answers are, examine your week. Where do these priorities appear? If they are absent, that absence is important information. You do not need to dedicate every hour to what matters most. Life requires maintenance. Bills must be paid. Errands must be completed. Responsibilities must be handled. There will always be ordinary tasks that do not inspire you. But your most important values cannot survive forever on leftovers. Give them protected time. Give them your attention. Give them your best energy when possible. And remember that what deserves your attention may not always be the thing that produces the greatest external reward. A conversation with your child may not advance your career. A walk with a friend may not increase your income. An afternoon spent resting may not add anything to your resume. But life is not a resume. Some of the most valuable experiences leave no measurable achievement behind. This is where your definition of success must become deeper. Success is not simply accumulating more, it is becoming increasingly aligned with what you believe matters. When your values and your daily actions begin moving in the same direction, something changes inside you. You no longer feel as though you are constantly betraying one part of your life to satisfy another. You begin making decisions with greater clarity because you know what deserves protection. This also makes saying no easier. When you know what you are saying yes to, you become more comfortable saying no to what competes with it. You are not rejecting the world, you are choosing your place within it. So take a quiet moment and ask yourself, what deserves the best version of me? Not the leftover version, not the distracted version, not the exhausted version, the best version. Then ask another question. Does my life currently give it to them? If the answer is no, do not wait for the perfect time. Rearrange something, cancel something, protect something, begin somewhere. You have spent this journey learning how to remove what does not belong. Now use that freedom wisely. Choose what deserves your presence. Choose what deserves your patience. Choose what deserves your energy. Choose what deserves the limited number of days you have been given. Because a simple life is not a life in which you care about nothing. It is a life in which you care deeply about a few things and refuse to let everything else consume the attention those things deserve. Chapter 14. Choose less, protect more, and live fully. You have spent this journey removing what distracted you, questioning what you were taught to desire, setting limits around your time, and learning to recognize the difference between what is urgent and what is truly important. You have cleared space, but now you must answer the question that gives simplicity its real purpose. What will you do with that space? The answer is not to fill it again. The answer is to live inside it. Look back at the person you were at the beginning of this journey. Perhaps you were not living a terrible life. You were simply living a life that had become crowded without your permission. You were carrying responsibilities that had accumulated over time, chasing goals you had never questioned, responding to demands before deciding whether they deserved a response. The world was choosing for you. Now you have learned to choose. That does not mean the world has changed. It has not. Your phone can still interrupt you. Advertisements can still tempt you. People can still ask for your time. Work can still become demanding. Problems can still appear without warning. The pressure to compare yourself with others will still exist. You cannot simplify the entire world, but you can simplify your relationship with it. You can decide what enters your mind. You can decide what receives your attention. You can decide which commitments deserve your time. You can decide which possessions are worth maintaining. You can decide which ambitions are truly yours. You can decide who receives access to your energy. That is the deeper meaning of a simple life. It is not a life where nothing happens. It is a life where everything does not automatically receive permission to matter. This distinction changes how you move through the world. When someone offers you an opportunity, you do not immediately ask whether you can fit it into your schedule. You ask whether it belongs in the life you are building. When you see something you want to buy, you do not immediately ask whether you can afford it. You ask whether owning it will genuinely improve your life. When you receive a message, you do not assume that because someone can reach you, they are entitled to your immediate attention. When a new goal appears, you do not automatically chase it because everyone else seems to be chasing the same thing. You pause, you examine, you choose. This is what it means to live deliberately. But remember something important. Simplicity is not a permanent state of perfection. Life will become complicated again. You will have seasons when work demands more from you. You may have children, financial pressure, family responsibilities, unexpected emergencies, or difficult transitions. There will be periods when your carefully designed routines fall apart. Do not interpret that as failure. A simple life is not one that never becomes complicated. It is one that knows how to return to clarity. When life becomes crowded again, you know what to do. Look at your calendar. Look at your commitments. Look at your attention. Look at your spending. Look at your environment. Ask what has entered your life that does not belong there. Then begin removing again. This is a lifelong practice. You will outgrow goals. Your circumstances will change. Your values may become clearer. The people you love will need different things from you at different stages of life. What mattered deeply at 30 may matter less at 50. What you once considered essential may eventually feel unnecessary. Allow your life to evolve. Do not become so committed to simplicity that simplicity itself becomes another rigid identity. The purpose is not to follow a perfect set of rules. The purpose is to remain awake. Keep asking, does this matter? Is this worth carrying? Does this deserve my attention? Is this helping me become the person I want to be? These questions can become your internal compass. And perhaps, after everything you have removed, questioned, and reconsidered, you will discover that the greatest benefit of a simpler life is not having fewer things. It is having fewer things competing with the things you truly love. You have more room for a meaningful conversation, more patience for the people closest to you, more attention for work that matters, more energy for your health, more silence for your thoughts, more time to notice ordinary moments before they become memories. That is the final paradox of simplicity. When you choose less, you do not necessarily experience less life. You may finally experience more of the life that was already there. So do not leave this journey believing that your mission is to create a perfectly minimal existence. Your mission is more practical and more difficult. Choose carefully, remove courageously, protect what matters. And when the world becomes loud again, remember that you are not required to answer every voice. You have one life. You have a limited amount of time. You have a finite supply of attention. Spend them where they can create something you will still value when the noise has finally faded. Because the goal was never to escape the complicated world. The goal was to become clear enough to live fully inside it. Conclusion: live with less noise and more intention. A complicated world does not require a complicated life. That may be the most important lesson of this entire journey. You began by looking honestly at the life you were already living. You examined the invisible weight created by unnecessary commitments, constant stimulation, excessive consumption, borrowed ambitions, and the endless pressure to become more. You learned that much of the complexity surrounding you was not inevitable. Some of it had simply accumulated because you stopped questioning what you were carrying. Then you began to let go. You reclaimed your attention from distractions. You cleared physical and mental clutter. You learned to say no before your schedule became crowded again. You defined what enough meant to you instead of allowing the world to define it. You questioned the goals you inherited and confronted the identities you had been performing for years. Slowly, something changed. You began to understand that simplicity is not about having an empty life. It is about having a life with room to breathe, room to think before reacting, room to choose before committing, room to rest without guilt, room to enjoy what you already have, room to give your best self to the people and pursuits that genuinely matter. You also discovered that simplicity is not a destination you reach once and protect forever. Life will continue changing. New responsibilities will arrive, your priorities will evolve, unexpected problems will disrupt your plans. There will be seasons when your life becomes complicated again. When that happens, do not panic. Return to the questions that brought you here. What am I carrying that I no longer need? What is consuming my attention without deserving it? What am I saying yes to out of fear or guilt? What am I chasing simply because everyone else is chasing it? What deserves the best parts of me? These questions can bring you back to yourself. Remember that you do not have to reject ambition to live simply. You do not have to abandon success, responsibility, achievement, or growth. You only need to stop allowing them to consume everything else. Build the career, but do not lose your life inside it. Earn the money, but do not become its servant. Own beautiful things, but do not let them own your attention. Pursue meaningful goals, but remember to experience the life you are building along the way. And above all, stop waiting for the world to become quiet before you begin living with intention. It will always be noisy. There will always be another notification, another demand, another opportunity, another opinion, another reason to hurry. You cannot control the noise, but you can decide how much of it enters your life. You can pause, you can choose, you can walk away, you can protect your attention, you can put down what was never yours to carry. Perhaps the simplest life is not the one with the fewest possessions or the smallest schedule. Perhaps it is the life in which you finally understand what deserves your limited time and have the courage to protect it. So go forward with less clutter, fewer automatic yeses, and a clearer sense of enough. Make room for quiet, make room for people, make room for meaningful work. Make room for ordinary moments that do not need to be optimized, photographed, or shared. Make room for yourself, because at the end of the day, simplicity is not about reducing life. It is about removing enough unnecessary noise that you can finally hear what your life has been trying to tell you. And once you hear it, do not ignore it. Live accordingly.